Hello everybody, Gavin McCormack here. Now this week we are at Brown's Station right behind me here in the Antarctic. Now this week we're talking all about explorers and exploration. And interestingly enough, the Brown Station right behind me was burnt down by its owner and manager because the winter was so cold he could no longer stand staying here and burnt it down just so he was able to leave. Now this week we're joined by Jeff. Hello Jeff.
Hello Gavin.
Jeff is a historian. He's going to tell us lots of amazing information about the early explorers who visited this Antarctic land. Now, Jeff, I understand that in the early years, this was a place where people really wanted to discover. It was like a land nobody had ever seen. People like Shackleton, why did they bother to even come here? What was the drive? What was the temptation of coming to this frozen, icy landscape?
You know, the explorers at this point in time, it was the heroic age of exploration. And there was a lot missing on the map of Antarctica. There was a lot of gaps and a lot still yet to be filled in. And there was a great desire to find those hidden gaps and find the edges of the continent and just the extent of it and how big it actually was and see what was there. Great unknown.
Yeah, but it's so cold here, you know, and we're talking 150 years ago, 200 years ago. Like, we've arrived here today and we're on this amazing boat and we've got a big steel ship that's not going to sink. What kind of vessels are we talking about? What ships were they coming on? What were they made of?
Yeah, so Shackleton's ship, his most famous ship, he had more than one. He had the Nimrod and the Endurance. The Endurance being the more famous of the two, would have been a wood-hulled sailing ship with an auxiliary steam-powered engine, but it wasn't very powerful, nothing like what we have today. I think it had 350 horsepower. For example, we have 60 horsepower engine behind me here. So
wow.
Not exactly powerful.
Yeah, right. And tell me, what would power it? I mean, was it petrol? Was it fuel? Were they rowing? Were they sails?
Yeah, so it was steam-powered, but through coal. So they would have to stop in the southern tip of South America and supply with coal and stuff and make sure that they brought an adequate supply down to Antarctica for the duration of their journey.
Yeah, how long are we talking about? So if we had to sail from the UK, from England, all the way to Antarctica, stopping for fuel, how long is that journey if we're going about Shackleton in 1857, 1900? How long would it take to get here?
Yeah, I mean, it all depends on the route that they would take, but we're talking a months-long journey just to get from England down to the southern tip of South America, and from there you still have hundreds of miles to go to get to Antarctica.
Yeah. Oh my goodness! And we went on the sea yesterday. It was extremely rough. So very, very dangerous.
Yeah, so the Drake Passage in between the Antarctic Peninsula and the southern tip of South America, Cape Horn, is known as some of the roughest ocean in the entire world, if not the roughest patch of ocean in the world.
Oh my goodness.
It was quite the journey that they were undertaking.
Yeah, so what would they eat? You know, because they're away for a month, it's 150 years ago, refrigeration is kind of just coming around. Like, what are they eating on these journeys?
Yeah, so coming across refrigeration or a freezer is not very hard when you're in Antarctica.
Yeah.
Everything can be kept chilled. But they would bring a lot of canned goods and also like something called pemmican bars, which was pretty much the protein bar of the day.
Oh, wow.
Super consolidated food that was lightweight and easy to transport.
But what about if they were here? Let's say you're in Antarctica and you run out of food. You know, what would they eat? What were they hunting? Were there things they would catch? What would they eat if they were here?
Yeah, so if supplies were running low, and they did on the Endurance expedition, they would start to supplement their diets with penguin and with seal, mostly, for the most part. And this was really paramount to their survival. Fresh food is really important because we as humans don't produce vitamin C, and we have to have vitamin C in our bodies. Right. We can get that from eating fresh meat. And if you don't get that, you start to suffer from something called scurvy, which is the bane of every sailor's existence throughout history.
Yeah, wow. And just so everybody knows, it wouldn't be hard to catch a penguin because penguins have never seen humans before. They just come right up to you. So there's no hunting. You don't have to chase them. They literally walk up to you, right? Yeah, that's really amazing. Now, Shackleton was this amazing leader. He goes down in history as being one of the greatest explorers on the planet. He joined the Royal Navy at 16 in 1901, and then he started to journey around the world with Robert Falcon Scott, and then in 1914 his most famous journey of all, where he sailed the Endurance and he tried to, come down to Antarctica, something happened that was monumental. It was, for the history books will never be repeated. Can you tell us what happened between 1914 and 1916 when Endurance became trapped in ice down here in Antarctica?
Yeah, so Shackleton, Shackleton's famous as an explorer, but more famous as a survivor. And his leadership skills as a survivor. Shackleton's big game plan was he was going to come down on the Endurance, his ship, with his men. There's 28 of them, and they were going to cross the Antarctic continent. They were just going to do a small party of the men to do this, and they were going to walk from one side all the way over to the other side, where another ship had sailed down from Australia, the Aurora, to meet them in the Ross Sea.
Wow.
They never made it to the continent. And what happened is, on the journey down, the ice was getting thicker and thicker and thicker, and finally encased the Endurance in an ice prison, where the Endurance was just at the whim of the ice and the currents of the ocean, being transported around in the ocean. They couldn't escape even if they wanted to. There was nowhere to go.
So the ship got crushed and sank, and the men were stranded. So what did they do?
Yeah, the ship eventually was crushed and sank, but this took months. They spent months and months trapped in the ice on the ship itself. And then the ice started to slowly squeeze and squeeze and squeeze the ship. You can imagine the turmoil that the men went through, of the buckling of the wood in the beams of the ship, and the ship slowly falling apart on you, and your home falling apart around you. And then eventually Shackleton called for them to abandon ship, and they would set up camp on the sea ice itself, on the frozen ocean, and this would be called Ocean Camp.
Goodness me, that's crazy. And just so everybody knows, it's not the kind of place you want to go camping. The winds get up to 250 kilometers an hour. It's minus 80 degrees at some points. There's leopard seals lurking in the ice. I mean, this is not really a campsite for a holiday. So they're on the ice, and then they're struggling. Shackleton decides to do something absolutely amazing. What does he do?
So what happens is, they're on the ice. They actually try to journey across the ice. They want to try and make it over to the side of the peninsula, to the eastern side of the Antarctic Peninsula. They attempt this, but the journey is too arduous and it's too difficult. The sea ice doesn't just freeze like a flat lake. It freezes, it's got all these undulations and these big pressure ridges and stuff, and they can't traverse across them. So they have to wait. And they have this patience camp called Patience Camp, actually. And there they sit and they wait for the sea ice to start breaking apart. And once the sea ice starts breaking apart, they can actually get into the water and start to use their small boats. They had saved the lifeboats, the skiffs, from the Endurance and kept them with them.
Wow.
So there were three of them. There was the James Caird, the Dudley Docker, and the Stackham Willis.
Wow. Okay, but they're still stuck on the ice. I mean, they can't get very far. And they're struggling, it's cold, they're running out of food, the men are losing hope. Shackleton tells them he's going to do something, and he does something monumental. What was that?
Well, at this point in time, something he does, he's a great leader, and he tells them, he says, as soon as the ship sinks, he says to them, well, let's go home. And he kept a great level of optimism throughout the entire journey. But what they do at this point in time is all 28 men pile in to these lifeboats, and they start a journey that will take them up to Elephant Island in the South Shetland Islands. And this is over open ocean, and it's a very, very perilous journey. But this is only part of the journey. It gets crazier.
So they get to Elephant Island, and they have another base there. And how many months are we talking now since the ship has been crushed and sunk?
Oh, we're talking multiple years.
In Antarctica, lost, hungry, cold, and they arrive at Elephant Island, and Shackleton says, I'm going to save the day. I'm going to do something crazy. I might not return, but I'm going to come and pick you up.
Yeah, it's a self-rescue situation. Shackleton is very aware of where he is and the waters he's in, and that nobody's coming to rescue. The waters are devoid of whales at this point in time. Whaling has really diminished the numbers, and so no whaling vessels would be coming by. And those are the only other people down in this area of the world at this point in history. So Shackleton knows that he needs to get to help and bring help back to his men. So what he decides is that with the currents and with the ways the wind blows, his best chance of survival is if they can get 800 nautical miles away to South Georgia Island. And that's what they aim to do.
So that's 1,284 kilometers. That's very far. And is it a rowing boat? Have they got sails? What's this boat like?
Yeah, so it's the James Caird, which is the largest of the three lifeboats that they have left. And what they do is they take apart the other two remaining lifeboats, and they start to piece together the James Caird and make her a little bit more seaworthy. And they decide that only 6 men will undergo this journey. So Shackleton and 5 other men will go. And they do give it some sails, and they do have oars with it, but mostly they're going to be sailing.
Now, when he left the men would be worried that he maybe wouldn't return, because that's a crazy journey. You know, traveling from Antarctic Peninsula all the way to South Georgia, 1,200 kilometers, very far. It's freezing, you know, it's cold, it's snowing, it's windy. But he succeeds. He comes back for them, doesn't he? How long does it take for him to go there and arrive back? And what did the men think when he did return?
It's an absolutely amazing feat. They travel this 800 miles. They travel through hurricane force winds, and this takes 16 days. 16 days at sea in a very, very small craft. And it's only through the navigational skills of the captain of the Endurance, Frank Worsley, who really deserves the captain. He really deserves a lot of the credit for this journey as he navigated them to this tiny little dot in this vast open ocean.
Amazing. And he came back and rescued the men, and everybody, remarkably, everybody survived.
Yes, all 28 men survive,
Wow.
which is absolutely amazing.
Really amazing. Thank you so much, Jeff. Now, this week, we want you to research and explore it from your own country. There are many parts of the world that over the last 500 years have been discovered, explored, and flags have been stuck in the ground to say, we discovered it first. And that takes someone with great determination, perseverance, and leadership. And this week, we want you to research them from your own country or another country close to you. And when you do that, we want you to understand what it feels like to be a true leader, to have determination, to have passion and drive, and make sure that no matter how difficult something seems, you can always achieve it if you put your full heart into it. Jeff, thank you for helping us today. It's
You're
been
welcome.
amazing. See you next week.